The Galactic Empire, a colossal entity spanning thousands of systems, had long considered itself the unrivaled ruler of the cosmos. Its vast fleet of warships was unmatched, and its technologies were so advanced that they made lesser species tremble at their mere sight. For centuries, the Empire's citizens had lived in luxury, knowing they were part of the most powerful civilization to ever exist. Their military conquests were swift, their enemies few, and those who did oppose them were swiftly crushed underfoot. To them, the galaxy was their domain, and all others were simply subjects to be ruled. Then, humanity appeared, a fledgling species barely emerging from its own atmosphere. The Empire's spies reported that humans had begun to explore their nearby star systems, sending primitive ships into space. The humans' technology was clunky, their ships slow and inefficient by Empire standards. Still, they were not entirely ignorant of the threat such a species might pose one day. It wasn't the humans themselves the Empire feared. It was their potential, the unknown future of what they could become. But to the Empire's leadership, that was a distant worry, and one they didn't lose sleep over. At a High Council meeting, the Emperor's most trusted advisors laughed when the subject of humanity came up. A race of apes, barely able to communicate with their primitive technologies. They are no threat, one said, smirking as he watched the holo-projection of Earth and its scattered colonies. In a few decades, they'll be nothing more than a memory. Exactly, another officer chimed in. We'll send a fleet to annex their territories when the time is right, and they'll bend the knee, if they're even still around then. The Emperor himself, a figure of immense power and cold calculation, simply nodded in agreement. He had heard similar reports about other species that had tried, and failed, to challenge the Empire. Do not waste resources on them just yet, the Emperor ordered. Their development is too slow to pose any real danger, but we will keep an eye on them, in case the situation changes. The Council dismissed the issue with the flick of a hand. After all, the Empire had seen it all. It had crushed revolts, conquered entire species, and had never once met a foe that could rival its dominance. Humanity, to them, was just a speck, a flicker in the galaxy that would soon burn out. But deep in the Empire's intelligence division, a few officers began to grow uneasy. They were the ones tasked with monitoring emerging species, and something about humanity intrigued them. While the Empire's bureaucrats dismissed them as a trivial concern, these officers knew better than to trust mere surface impressions. Humanity was young, true, but they were curious, inventive, and determined. In a few reports, they noted human innovations, new propulsion systems, experimental weaponry, and unexpected breakthroughs. These were small, but they were not to be ignored. For now, the Empire's leaders refused to take the humans seriously. It was a decision they would regret. Months passed, and the Empire's confidence in its supremacy remained unshaken. Humanity, however, had not been idle. While the Empire had dismissed their technological progress, humanity had been rapidly advancing, using their innate creativity and fierce determination to overcome their limitations. Their fleet of small, makeshift ships had expanded, and they had begun to explore beyond their borders, venturing into the uncharted reaches of the galaxy. The humans had already begun to develop a reputation as resourceful, though still small in number. What the Empire failed to understand was that these early, seemingly insignificant ventures were only the beginning of what humanity was capable of. The first major encounter came when a small human fleet of exploration vessels, having unwittingly crossed into Imperial space, was detected by the Empire's border patrol. It was a routine situation, a few ships out of place, nothing more than a simple diplomatic incident to be resolved quickly. The Empire's military leaders saw no need to waste any time or resources. They ordered a single squadron of ships to intercept and neutralize the intruders. It was meant to be a swift operation, an insignificant action to remind the humans of their place in the galaxy. The Empire's ships, sleek and powerful, were far superior to the outdated human vessels. The humans had no chance, or so they thought. As the Empire's fleet approached, the humans showed no signs of surrender. Instead, they surprised their enemies by immediately engaging in a defensive posture. The human ships, though old and clunky, were agile and unpredictable. Their movements on the battlefield were chaotic, difficult to predict. It was as if the humans had no respect for conventional tactics, and they fought with a desperation that the Empire's soldiers had never encountered. The Empire's ships unleashed volleys of plasma and ion fire, but the humans swerved and dove through the chaos, avoiding destruction by the skin of their teeth. What really stunned the Empire's commanders, however, was how the humans fought back. Using crude but highly effective weaponry, they managed to inflict real damage on the Empire's fleet. A stray shot from one of the human ships managed to breach the hull of an Imperial destroyer, creating a massive breach that sent debris floating into space. Another human vessel, while on the verge of being destroyed, detonated a near-miss missile in a last-ditch effort, creating a chain reaction that disabled a second Imperial ship. Though the humans' fleet was outmatched, their tenacity and unorthodox tactics left the Empire's commanders confused. For a species so young, so primitive, the humans had done the unthinkable. They had hurt the Empire. But the Empire, confident in its military superiority, quickly crushed the remaining human ships. The battle was over in a matter of hours, and the surviving humans were taken prisoner, their ships destroyed. In the eyes of the Empire, it was nothing more than a minor skirmish, an insignificant resistance easily crushed. Yet there was a new feeling settling into the Empire's leadership, an unsettling recognition that something had shifted. The Empire's analysts, who had long dismissed humanity as a non-threat, were now forced to reconsider. The humans hadn't just fought back. They had fought with a level of ingenuity and unpredictability that left the Empire's commanders rattled. It wasn't just a defeat, it was a warning. For the first time, the Empire was forced to admit that humanity might not be as easy to control as they had once thought. Back on Earth, the human fleet commanders celebrated their minor victory, knowing that they had made their mark on the galaxy, no matter how small. For them, it wasn't just about surviving. It was about sending a message. They had proven that they could challenge the Empire. Perhaps not today, but someday, the Empire would know their name. Weeks after the skirmish, the Empire's leadership tried to move past the incident, dismissing it as a fluke, a few ships getting lucky before their inevitable destruction. However, the damage from that unexpected confrontation lingered in the minds of many in the Empire's high command. The Intelligence Division, previously confident in their assessment of humanity's capabilities, found themselves facing a rising tide of unease. Something was different about these humans. What the Empire didn't know was that humanity had been working on something far beyond their imagination. A weapon capable of striking fear into the heart of the galaxy. For years, Earth's greatest minds had been collaborating in secret, pouring every ounce of their ingenuity into a single project that would change the course of history. And now, the time had come. The first whispers of the human Supercarrier began to spread like wildfire through the galaxy. It was a mammoth ship, far larger than anything the Empire had seen. It was called the Phoenix, and it was humanity's answer to the Empire's overwhelming military might. The Phoenix was not just a warship. It was a symbol of humanity's resilience, their refusal to bow down to a superior force. It was humanity's declaration that they would never again be underestimated. The Empire, however, believed that the Phoenix was nothing more than a fanciful myth, an exaggeration, a tale spun by the humans to inflate their self-worth. After all, how could such a primitive species possibly build a ship capable of taking on the might of the Empire? That belief lasted until the day the Phoenix made its first public appearance. It was unlike anything the Empire had ever seen. A massive supercarrier, stretching more than 2 kilometers long, bristling with advanced weaponry and shield systems. The Phoenix's hull was reinforced with new materials that absorbed energy, making it nearly impervious to conventional weaponry. Its engines were capable of reaching faster than light speeds, and its weapons systems were a combination of cutting-edge technologies that had only been rumored to exist in secret military circles. When the Phoenix finally emerged from a concealed human space dock, it was a game-changer. The humans, with their limited resources, had built a ship capable of taking on entire fleets, something the Empire had thought impossible. It wasn't just the size of the ship that shocked. The Empire's first response to the Phoenix was to dismiss it as a bluff. Surely, the humans could not be foolish enough to think they could challenge the Empire with a single warship. The Empire had fought wars against entire star systems. What could one human ship possibly do? Their arrogance ran deep, and the Empire's commanders were certain they could snuff out the Phoenix before it even had a chance to prove its worth. But as the Phoenix entered Imperial space, the laughter of the Empire's military leaders quickly turned to silence. The ship was not just another weapon. It was an embodiment of human determination and innovation, built to fight with more than just firepower. The Empire had underestimated humanity's resourcefulness, and they were about to pay for it. The Empire had already gathered a fleet of its finest warships, hundreds of heavily armed vessels, to intercept the Phoenix. With their overwhelming numbers and superior firepower, they believed it would be a simple task to destroy the lone human ship and send a clear message to the galaxy. But as soon as the Phoenix engaged, the Empire's plans began to unravel. The Phoenix, while massive, was far more nimble than the Empire's commanders had anticipated. It weaved and spun with a grace that defied its size. The human ship's advanced shield technology absorbed and redirected the Empire's energy blasts, making it nearly impervious to the Empire's initial attacks. Every time the Empire's fleets attempted to focus fire on the Phoenix, the ship's rapid evasive maneuvers kept them off balance. No Imperial fleet commander had ever dealt with such unpredictability. It was as if the humans had thrown away all the traditional rules of warfare. The Phoenix fired back with devastating precision, its weapons slicing through the shields of the Empire's warships with ease. The Empire's fleet was designed for overwhelming strength, but they were not prepared for a warship that could strike at their weaknesses. Each blast from the Phoenix left Imperial ships in flames, their defensive systems struggling to keep up with the relentless assault. The Empire's arrogance had left them woefully unprepared for a fight against a ship that defied all their expectations. But it wasn't just the Phoenix's weapons that caused the Empire's fleets to falter. The humans fought with a cunning and resourcefulness that bewildered the Empire's strategic minds. The Phoenix wasn't simply engaging in a direct assault, it was disrupting the Empire's entire battle strategy. Its advanced hacking systems scrambled the communications between Imperial ships, creating confusion and chaos within their ranks. The once formidable Imperial formations began to break apart, their fleets descending into disarray as commanders struggled to maintain control. In one particularly devastating moment, the Phoenix launched a series of coordinated strikes on the Empire's supply ships, cutting off critical resources and leaving their warships unable to reload or repair. The humans had anticipated every move, even the Empire's counterattacks, and were one step ahead every time. The Empire's fleet, once confident in their superiority, found themselves in full retreat. Their ships were damaged, their morale shattered, and their fleet's cohesion destroyed. The Phoenix's attack was not a singular defeat, it was a humiliation. For the first time in centuries, the Empire was losing to a species they had once considered beneath them. Back in the Empire's command center, the mood shifted from arrogance to fear. "This cannot be happening," one officer muttered, watching the chaos unfold on the screen. "How is one ship doing this?" The answer was simple, but bitter to accept. Humanity was no longer just a minor nuisance. The Phoenix had shown that humanity could fight back and win. The Empire's high command was forced into an uncomfortable realization. If they didn't act quickly and decisively, the Phoenix's campaign could tear through their outer defenses, opening a path to the heart of their empire. For the first time, the Empire was not in control. Humanity, it seemed, had found a way to not only survive but thrive against the most powerful force in the galaxy. The defeat of the Empire's fleet at the hands of the Phoenix marked the beginning of a new kind of war, one that the Empire was utterly unprepared for. The rules that had governed galactic conflict for centuries were being rewritten. No longer was it enough to rely on overwhelming numbers and superior technology. Humanity's fight was not just about weapons, it was about strategy, adaptability, and an unyielding will to survive. The Empire's military, once a symbol of unquestionable dominance, was now on the back foot, forced to rethink its approach. As the Phoenix continued its relentless campaign, the Empire's leadership scrambled to adjust. The usual tactics of overwhelming force were no longer enough. Time and again, the Empire's fleets were thrown into disarray by humanity's unpredictable methods. The humans weren't just using brute strength to win. They were outthinking and outmaneuvering the Empire at every turn. In one notable battle, the Phoenix lured an entire Imperial task force into an asteroid field. The Empire's ships, designed for large-scale engagements, were slow and cumbersome in the dense space debris. The humans, in contrast, knew the terrain inside and out, using their smaller, faster ships to dart in and out of the debris, picking off targets with surgical precision. The Empire's ships struggled to keep up, unable to form their usual formations or bring their firepower to bear. The result was a crushing defeat for the Empire, with several Imperial destroyers reduced to floating wreckage. The Empire's command was forced to adapt in a way they never had before. They began to send out smaller, specialized fleets to counter humanity's tactics, but the humans were always one step ahead. They had learned from each encounter, evolving their strategies in real time. One of the human fleet commanders, a former civilian strategist named Captain Alice Monroe, became infamous for her ability to predict the Empire's every move. She didn't rely on superior firepower. She relied on psychological warfare, using misinformation and clever feints to throw the Empire's commanders off balance. For example, in another battle, Captain Monroe faked the Phoenix's destruction. The ship sent out a distress signal, simulating damage so severe that it appeared to be on the verge of falling apart. The Empire, confident that they had won, moved in to finish the job, only to be ambushed by the undamaged Phoenix and its hidden fleet. The trap decimated the Imperial forces, and the humans walked away victorious once again. The Empire had underestimated not only humanity's technology, but also their ability to think and act unpredictably. Meanwhile, the humans weren't just fighting in space. They began infiltrating Imperial-controlled planets, carrying out sabotage operations that crippled the Empire's industrial supply chains. Human resistance cells had sprouted in every corner of the galaxy, from the outer rim worlds to the heart of Imperial space. Sabotaged factories, destroyed supply depots, and hacking of Imperial systems became a daily occurrence. The Empire, stretched thin across its vast territories, found itself unable to maintain control over its colonies. Entire sectors began to rebel, inspired by the actions of the Phoenix and the growing human resistance movement. The Empire's high command convened in emergency meetings, their tone no longer confident or dismissive. "We cannot keep losing battles like this," one officer growled. "We've underestimated them, and they've shown us what they're capable of. We need a new plan, and we need it fast." The Emperor, once assured that humanity was no more than a passing nuisance, finally realized the gravity of the situation. He had failed to account for the human spirit, a force the Empire had never encountered in its long history. The fight had evolved into something more than just a war of technology and resources. It had become a battle of ideologies. Humanity, with its unyielding desire for freedom and survival, was proving to be a far more formidable adversary than the Empire had ever anticipated. And with every passing day, the Empire's grip on the galaxy weakened. The Phoenix, alongside a growing fleet of human ships, carved a path of destruction across the galaxy, leaving behind a trail of shattered Imperial dreams. The war had now dragged on for months, and the Empire's once unshakable control over the galaxy was beginning to unravel. The Phoenix, along with humanity's fleet of increasingly sophisticated ships, had become a symbol of hope to countless oppressed species across the galaxy. What began as a single ship's daring assault had transformed into a full-scale rebellion that the Empire could no longer contain. The very structure of the Empire was cracking, and the once indomitable force now found itself on the defensive. For the first time, the Emperor called for a meeting with his highest military commanders and advisors, his usual confidence replaced with an air of desperation. "We cannot let this continue," he stated coldly, his voice carrying an edge of anger. "If the Phoenix continues its rampage, it will inspire more systems to rise up against us. We cannot afford to lose control of our sectors." The discussions that followed were tense and fraught with tension. The Empire's military had suffered significant losses, and their best commanders were growing increasingly frustrated. The once unified war machine was beginning to fracture under the pressure. The Phoenix, along with humanity's clever tactics, had exposed the vulnerabilities in the Empire's systems, vulnerabilities the Empire had never considered. After hours of debate, the Empire's council finally agreed on a new strategy, a decisive strike against the heart of the human rebellion. The Emperor, unwilling to risk any more failures, authorized the creation of a new class of weapon, a weapon unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It was called the Annihilator, a massive warship capable of eradicating entire fleets in a single devastating blow. The Empire had kept this project secret for years, hoping to use it as a final weapon of last resort. The Annihilator was the Empire's most ambitious creation, a ship so large it dwarfed even the Phoenix. Its weapons were designed to deliver massive planet-shattering damage, capable of decimating entire fleets in an instant. The Empire's plan was simple. They would use the Annihilator to strike directly at the Phoenix, destroy the rebellion's flagship, and send a clear message to humanity that their fight was hopeless. As the massive warship was launched from the Imperial shipyards, the Empire's leaders believed they had finally gained the upper hand. The Phoenix, after all, could not stand against such overwhelming firepower. The final confrontation was drawing near, and the fate of the galaxy seemed to hinge on the outcome. Back on the human side, Captain Alice Monroe and the other leaders of the rebellion knew that the Empire would not let their growing success go unpunished. The intelligence they had gathered pointed to the Annihilator's construction, and its imminent deployment meant the humans would need to act quickly if they hoped to survive. Monroe, a brilliant strategist, was already planning their counteroffensive. The Phoenix, though mighty, would not be able to face the Annihilator head-on and live to tell the tale. The key to victory lay not in direct confrontation, but in the ability to outmaneuver and outthink the Empire once again. With her crew's determination and resourcefulness, she devised a plan that would play on the Empire's biggest weakness, its overconfidence. The humans had spent months learning the Empire's tactics, understanding its methods, and studying the vulnerabilities of its technology. They had prepared for this moment. The Empire's Annihilator would not be the final blow. They would make sure of it. The time had come for the final test. The rebellion would make its stand, using everything they had learned about the Empire, its tactics, and its weapons. It was a do-or-die moment, one that would either seal humanity's fate or solidify their place in the galaxy as a force that could not be ignored. The stage was set, and the galaxy held its breath. Would the Annihilator crush the rebellion, or would humanity's ingenuity once again turn the tide of war in their favor? The tension in the galaxy had reached a boiling point. The Annihilator, the Empire's crowning achievement, now loomed large in space, its weapons primed, its engines at full power, and its massive form casting a shadow of doom over the rebellion. The humans, on the other hand, had gathered their forces, readying the Phoenix and its fleet of smaller ships for what would be the most critical battle of their existence. Captain Alice Monroe stood at the command center of the Phoenix, staring at the star map before her. The Empire's new superweapon was heading straight toward their position, and her heart raced as she reviewed their final plan. It had to work, or they would all be destroyed. Her second-in-command, Lieutenant Eli Harris, approached her. "Captain, the fleet is ready. We've patched up as many ships as we could after the last skirmish. We're outnumbered and outgunned, but we have one chance." Monroe didn't look at him as she replied, her voice steady, yet filled with quiet determination. "We won't win through strength alone. We need to break the Empire's confidence once and for all. If we can make the Annihilator's commanders doubt their superiority, if we can create enough chaos, we might just have a chance." Her eyes flicked to the massive view screen in front of her, where the approaching shadow of the Annihilator could now be seen. The sheer size of it was intimidating, even from a distance, but Monroe knew better than to allow fear to take hold. She had to lead her people. They couldn't back down now. "We're not just fighting to survive, Eli. We're fighting to prove that the Empire's tyranny ends today. Humanity won't be crushed." The fleet readied themselves, and the Phoenix prepared to take center stage once again. But this time, it was different. This wasn't a fight for survival, it was a fight for freedom. Humanity would never have the same resources as the Empire, but they had something far more dangerous: unity, determination, and the will to never give up. The moment the battle began, the sheer force of the Annihilator took the first breath away. It opened fire with devastating force, sending massive energy blasts toward the fleet. But just as planned, the Phoenix immediately evaded, diving into a nearby asteroid field, using the cover of the debris to shield them from the initial barrage. The Empire's strategy had always been straightforward: destroy everything in their path. But humanity had a different approach. Human ships darted through the asteroid field, weaving between massive boulders and debris, creating a chaotic dance of destruction. Small, nimble human ships launched coordinated strikes against the Empire's fleet, slowly picking off the less maneuverable vessels. The Phoenix itself used its advanced energy shield to absorb incoming fire, taking no more than a few scratches as it launched its own missiles. Every missile was strategically aimed, every shot calculated, targeting weak points in the Empire's defense systems. But the Annihilator was still the Empire's trump card, and the battle was far from over. A massive energy beam surged from the Annihilator's primary cannon, cutting through space with the power to annihilate anything in its path. The beam struck the heart of the human fleet, and several smaller ships were immediately destroyed in a flash of bright light. Monroe's heart sank, but she had expected this. It was exactly what they were preparing for. "We need to use the Annihilator's arrogance against it," Monroe said, her voice calm and unwavering. "Eli, deploy the decoy." Lieutenant Harris nodded, activating the last phase of their plan. From the Phoenix, a series of holographic decoys flickered into existence, false versions of the flagship, mimicking its movement and energy signature. The decoys scattered, drawing the Annihilator's fire away from the real ship. The massive cannon fired again, this time missing its intended target as the decoys were obliterated instead. The Phoenix, now free from the immediate danger, fired its most powerful weapons in response. A barrage of missiles and concentrated plasma beams tore into the Annihilator, striking it at its weak points, slowly but surely starting to crack its defenses. The battle was at a critical point now, with both sides locked in a fierce, desperate struggle. The Annihilator retaliated with an even greater barrage, but the human fleet's cunning tactics were proving more effective than the Empire had ever predicted. With each blast, with each strike, the humans began to carve a path toward victory. The Empire's commanders, watching in disbelief as the once unassailable Annihilator took damage, scrambled to regain control. The humans, using every scrap of knowledge and creativity at their disposal, had managed to turn the tide of the war. In the final moments of the battle, with the Annihilator barely holding together, the Phoenix made a final daring charge. Using its advanced hacking systems, Monroe triggered a full system shutdown in the Annihilator, causing its weapons to malfunction and its shields to fail. With one final shot, the Phoenix fired a devastating blast at the core of the Annihilator, and in a brilliant explosion, the Empire's ultimate weapon was destroyed. The Empire, once so certain of its dominance, was now staring defeat in the face. The humans had done it. They had not only survived, but had won. The explosion of the Annihilator echoed across the galaxy, a signal to every corner of the Empire, and to every system under its oppressive rule, that the tide had irrevocably turned. The Phoenix, bloodied but victorious, hung suspended in the void, surrounded by the shattered remnants of the once feared superweapon. The humans had achieved the impossible. The Annihilator, the Empire's ultimate weapon, had been destroyed, and with it, the Empire's confidence and control over the galaxy. As the final echoes of the battle faded, Captain Alice Monroe stood at the command center of the Phoenix, her eyes locked on the view screen that showed the destruction they had wrought. Her heart was heavy, knowing that while they had won this battle, the war was far from over. Thousands of lives had been lost, countless battles fought, and entire star systems devastated. The cost of their victory weighed heavily on her shoulders. "We did it," Lieutenant Eli Harris said, his voice laced with disbelief and exhaustion. He looked at Monroe, a mixture of relief and admiration in his eyes. "We actually did it." Monroe's expression softened, but she knew better than to celebrate too soon. "This was just one victory, Eli. The Empire may have lost their weapon, but the fight isn't over. The Emperor will send more fleets. We still have to free the galaxy from their control." The message had already spread across the stars. Resistance movements on every planet, once in hiding, had now rallied with renewed hope. Systems that had been subjugated for centuries rose up in rebellion, inspired by the Phoenix's success. The Empire's grip on the galaxy was weakening with every passing hour, but they would not surrender without a fight. The Emperor, now faced with the crumbling of his empire, issued a decree to all loyalists: crush the rebellion at all costs. The humans must be eradicated before they can spread their contagion of defiance. But the Empire's response was slow. The loss of the Annihilator had shaken the Imperial leadership to its core. Their vaunted war machine, once seen as an unstoppable juggernaut, was now reeling. The military structure began to fracture as infighting broke out among the Empire's high-ranking officers, each vying for control, unwilling to accept their inevitable downfall. Monroe knew this was their moment. The humans had proven they could fight and win, and now it was time to finish what they had started. The Phoenix was more than just a warship, it was a symbol, and as long as they kept that symbol alive, the galaxy would continue to rise against the Empire. It was no longer just a fight for survival, it was a fight for freedom, for the right of every species to determine their own fate. "Prepare the fleet," Monroe ordered, her voice firm. "We're heading to the heart of the Empire. We're going to finish this." The humans had already broken the back of the Empire. Their fleets, though outnumbered, were rapidly expanding as more worlds joined the fight for freedom. The Phoenix would lead the charge, pushing deep into Imperial space, striking at the heart of the Empire's infrastructure. Every Imperial world they liberated added to the growing resistance, and the Empire's once feared power was slipping through their fingers. It didn't take long for the rebellion to reach the Imperial capital. The Emperor, once a figure of untouchable authority, now hid in his palace, trembling as the forces of freedom advanced on his doorstep. In the final days of his reign, he had only one option left: surrender or face total annihilation. Captain Monroe, however, had other plans. She led the charge into the heart of the Imperial capital. The Empire's last defense was crumbling, and they were powerless to stop it. Monroe's voice crackled over the comms. "This is the end, Emperor. You can either submit to the will of the galaxy, or you can face the consequences of your tyranny." The Emperor, broken and defeated, had no choice but to submit. The battle was over. The Empire, once an unstoppable force, was no more. The galaxy, though scared and battered, was free at last. In the wake of the Empire's collapse, the Phoenix became a beacon of hope for a galaxy recovering from centuries of oppression. The human rebellion had succeeded against all odds. The surviving Imperial officers, now leaders of fractured factions, were hunted down or made to face justice for their countless atrocities. But it wasn't just the victory itself that mattered. It was what humanity had shown the galaxy. They had demonstrated that no matter how mighty the oppressor, the spirit of the oppressed could never be crushed if they fought with unity, courage, and ingenuity. The Phoenix symbolized humanity's resolve, and the galaxy would forever remember the humans as the species that toppled the Empire. Captain Monroe stood at the helm of the Phoenix, looking out at the stars. The battle was over, but the work had only just begun. It was time to rebuild. Time to ensure that the galaxy, now freed from the Empire's iron grip, would never again fall under the weight of tyranny. Humanity had shown them all the way forward, and the galaxy would never forget the day it was saved by the courage and determination of a single species, humanity.